Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Southside Stories. It's great to have you here. Just a quick reminder, wherever you get your podcasts, if you can hit the subscribe button and notifications, you'll be the first to hear about the latest and forthcoming episodes as well. And talking about great guests, so this afternoon we have Stuart here from In the Dark. Hey, Stuart.
Hey, good to meet you, Matt.
And Stuart runs a video production company, does lots of really interesting things there. So we're going to get into a little bit about creativity, running a video production company. Of course, we're going to talk a bit about AI. And Stuart does some incredible things in his spare time. I don't know how he finds time for it, but he does some incredible things with his spare time. And we're going to get into that towards the end. So stick around. But Stuart, let's kick off. Tell us a little bit about you. Perhaps where you're based, a little bit about your company.
The company is based in the London Bridge area. I did my sort of 10 years in London. It got its pound of flesh out of me, as it does after a decade.
Yeah.
And so I now base myself out of Brighton so I can get a little bit more work-life balance, but with easy access into London. It feels a little bit like London on sea. I think it's often referred to as such. And it's also a nice place to shoot the breeze, think creatively, get pumped up to come back into London and energized each week.
Yeah, it's curious, isn't it? It's something about being by the water. I don't know if it's the positive ions or something, but seascapes. Yeah, it's great for the thinking, isn't it? And for
It, it
walking. And
it has a name. Apparently, it's called the biophilia
is
hypothesis.
it?
This is
Oh,
that
right.
being
Okay.
in areas of natural beauty inspires wonder and creativity in generally is cathartic for the soul. So,
Yeah.
having lived there for 4 years, I absolutely love London. I think it's still an amazing city, but I must say, I really have never regretted the move.
Yeah. No, good for you. Yeah. I mean, the closest I get to, I suppose London has got the open spaces, and I've got the river very near me. So I go running around the river, and that's my little bit of what's it called again?
The biophilia hypothesis.
Biosphere hypothesis. Not the easiest
Not,
expression to
it's
say,
not,
but
is it? It's not my term. I think it's Dr. Amir Khan who
oh
quoted it to
yeah,
me. He is he represents RSPB, and we do a lot of videos for them. And we did a little
ah,
video on this, which is how we were learning that being in nature is so good for the soul. And I just always latched onto it because it struck a chord with me.
yeah. No, I totally get that. A boy that grew up in Dorset, and I miss all that kind of green space and stuff. But no, that's great. Tell us a little bit though about what you do then, what your company does.
We make every different conceivable type of video you can probably imagine. On the PG side of things, certainly. Everything from music videos to corporate content to factual television programs. But if there is a particular niche I would say we have, it is filmmaking in the infrastructure sector. Anything, again, without even starting on AI, having a niche that is a little more specialized, perhaps ring fences you from some of those risks. And that is one that we sort of almost fell into by accident, really. When I first moved to London, I made a film about the Shard being constructed,
Mm,
a very lovely little art house piece for the
mm.
principal contractor. And of course, what happens when you make one good film for one good client is that word of mouth spreads quickly, and we've continued in that sort of arena ever since. And of course, that specific area of filmmaking has seen a lot of iterations, from drone and long term time lapse to BIM modeling and CGI.
Yeah, great. And we'll talk more about that in a second. Have you always done video production? I-
Yes,
Is that what you always wanted to go into?
it is. My long-standing quote is I've never had a real job, which is somewhat how it felt for the first 5 or 10 years. Probably less so now that I'm in more of a figurehead or administrative role than I once was. But yeah, I studied film at university. Actually, one of the guys who's coming in today who works for us, he and I went to university together. He was in front of the camera and I was behind it, and so it's really nice that we're still collaborating. And after I left university, I did that classic freelance creative thing of working for free, which I I'm no great advocate of, and unfortunately is something that's just almost taken for granted in our industry, or certainly was at the time. And then I struck upon this idea that I would make the first film for any potentially decent client for free. And then when they came back and asked for a second one, that was my opportunity to start charging them for it. And eventually, the wheels sort of kicked into motion, and we developed a healthy business off the back of it.
Yeah, well done, because not that many people who, even before going to university, decide, okay, this is what I want to do. They go and study it, and then X number of years later, you're still doing it, and I guess you're still enjoying it.
I am, yeah. Every day is different. And I think at some point I probably also, along with the guy who I work with now, harbored ambitions of being in front of the camera. And I think it was in our third year of uni, we essentially were told, right, you have to choose, it's one or the
Mm.
other. And I've always wondered what it would have been like if I'd gone for the in front of the camera role. But I've never regretted the decision to run a production company. I love working for myself with a group of really like-minded people, exceptional people that make an exceptional business, and it's just so much fun. And we're at that size, like 9, 10 people, mainly full time, a couple of 3-day weekers, where it still feels like a family theme to the business. And yeah, it's given me an opportunity to travel the world and do something that I love and stay creative. And I think if you can turn a book whilst also doing anything creative in the world today, then you're doing all right. You can't complain.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. Tell us, what do you think is a great, either like the perfect brief for you, something you would get really excited about, or maybe you've already received it. Maybe it's like the project that you are most proud of, that you think
Mm.
has really showcased what you can do as a production company at its best.
Well, again, I think there's an old truism that there's jobs that you do for the money and then there's jobs that you do for the passion, and we're no exception. Occasionally, the two align somewhat, but I do think that we've just recently made a feature documentary about London's Great River Thames and the super sewer
Mm,
that's now being built underneath it
mm,
to clean up the river.
mhm.
Is a good example of where our end client was trying to get a TV broadcaster to make a series, and we kept telling them that we could do it ourselves. And ultimately, they decided to bite the bullet and commission us to make a film. And we went out and made a sort of Netflix-esque documentary about this huge infrastructure project on London's Great River Thames. And it's, it was an amazing thing to sign up to, an immense amount of work. Far more hours were put into it than we would have ever been paid for. But it's a great example of when you get to align your artistic designs with a little bit of career maintenance at the same time. We were commissioned, we did get paid, but also it's something we were really excited about. That's probably
Fantastic.
the latest number one.
Brilliant. I'm almost staggered by, when, of course, doing this podcast and just doing the editing of the episodes, or, short clips for YouTube. The amount of time that takes. I mean, doing a whole feature film, it's a hell of an undertaking, isn't it?
Yeah, and every time we seem to do something like that, we always say we will never do it again, because you're absolutely right. And often that's something that we face when dealing with clients and quoting them, is they don't necessarily appreciate the amount of work that goes into post. And more now, with the ubiquitous nature of cameras on phones and clients with their own internal capacity on some level or another, they'll be saying, oh, it's fine, just shoot this and then send us all the footage. And then of course they can't process the footage, and they don't have machines strong enough to process the footage. And then they don't understand why all the clip labels are just arbitrary numbers rather than the name of the interviewee at a given moment in time. And so we've had to go through the kind of hand holding process with clients to be like, look, we're still here. We can still do the edit for you. We can probably save you a lot of time, if not money, by the time you've invested resource in making that happen. But yeah, the magic is in post. Again, editors hate to have you sitting over their shoulder watching them edit, but there's something magical about watching that curious alchemy of an editor with an online editing platform working their magic. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Now, technology, I mean, I suppose, yeah, tech affects so many different areas, but video production, if I think about 10 years, yeah, we've seen sort of the kind of SLR go from a stills camera to really capable 4K with brilliant lenses. We've seen 360-degree cameras and drones. Tell us a little bit about, what has that enabled in terms of telling a story, um,
Well,
being able to, yeah, express things in a creative way. What capabilities has that given you?
I think you could sum it up by saying that it completely democratized the video and film production industry. Initially, for me, my first camera was like a hybrid DSLR. Actually, no, I tell a lie. Initially, I shot on tape, but even back then, it was digital tape. You transcoded it, you brought it onto a
Uh-huh.
laptop, and suddenly I was able to produce things that looked at least similar, if not akin, to what large, expensive agencies were providing in Soho. And of course, now that has iterated to the point where anybody with a really nice creative vision can pick up a phone or a small DSLR and capture something with shallow depth of field that looks stunning. And it's all happened very, very quickly. So the opportunities that have come with that are huge, but they've also presented a number of challenges. And probably the number one for us is just staying relevant. You cannot rest on your laurels. You also can't just sit there and say, it'll never affect me. What we create is higher quality. You have to have a really inquisitive mind and be willing to latch on to the latest and greatest. And sometimes we've done that and it's failed. I mean, I think you quoted one of the classics there, the old 360 camera. We've experimented with those, we tinkered with them. Ultimately, they seem to be more of a gimmick until they were all embedded in one single device that could do it all for you. Initially, you had to like stack 12 GoPros on a big ring, right, and
Oh
have them all
yeah,
filming simultaneously, and it was just
yeah,
an absolute nightmare.
yeah.
But then in other areas, drones were released, and I remember thinking, I do not want to fly one of those things over anybody's head in central London and watch it crash or have a flyaway. And over time, we just realized that was going to be something that clients were going to demand more and more of. It's cinematic. It has these incredible wide panoramics of your surrounding environment. And so, yeah, we took the plunge and we've never regretted it. And we've got 3 in-house pilots now who are out day in, day out surveying and getting pretties and getting nice photography. So it's become a whole sort of side division to the business, if you will.
It's
But
pretty
yeah,
incredible, isn't it? Because
it's
yeah,
it's insane. It's insane. Great opportunities, but
yeah,
great risks as well.
yeah. I mean, the drone stuff is really, aerial footage is sort of lifted the production standards so much, isn't it? But just from a practical perspective, and be able to have that perspective, especially for infrastructure projects, for you, it's kind of added, because in the old days it would have required a helicopter,
That's right.
and that was, out of reach, except for, high end budget TV and film
Yeah.
companies. Yeah.
We used to cut corners by hopping in a helicopter with the photographer, and then we'd take it in turns to dangle out of the plane and get shots of like the River Thames with all the new developments that were going up. That was quite a regular gig, but obviously nowhere near as regular or as good or probably as safe as doing the same thing on a minute basis with drone technology.
And I guess miniaturization of cameras as well. I mean, the smaller, newer GoPros can pack a pretty sizable punch. Does that, when you're looking at a piece of, I'm thinking about the sewer actually. For those
Yeah,
people that don't know, this super sewer has been, I don't know how many years it's been going. It's just become switched on, I think, in the last
that's
6 months
right.
or so.
Yeah. The
So
commissioning
20,
was
20
just
to 30 kilometer tunnel. I mean, this is a massive engineering project.
yeah. And
And I guess
the
the
hope
smaller
is
little,
it'll clean up the river within 3 months. They're
yeah,
anticipating that they'll start to see improved wildlife and marine flora and fauna. It's
yeah,
incredible.
it is. It is. Do things like little GoPros, were you able to get into the drilling equipment? Have you had kind of interesting angles, or how have you used that in that particular project?
Yeah, I think when we first pitched to Tideway, we've been on the project since 2017, and we talked about doing underwater photography for them, which we did a
Mm,
very small amount of, but we did do some
mm.
of. It turns out with the Thames estuary being tidal, there's a load of silt in the water. So even though the
Oh
water
yeah,
now is cleaner, it doesn't necessarily look it to the
yeah,
untrained eye. But yeah, we put cameras down the tunnel that were fixed, and we powered them either off 110 volt, or if they were external, we ran them off solar panels, and then we took imagery like every minute. We'd take a photo for 6 months, and we'd see them first drill out the tunnel, and then we'd see this gigantic tunnel boring machine, this huge piece of infrastructure that was shipped over from the Netherlands, and that would just be lowered into place. And then cameras were affixed onto the tunnel boring machine as it dug its way under the Thames. And that's probably a good example again of where, okay, you might have people out there who can, one man bands who are going to grab a camera and can shoot a really nice, tailored, well lit interview, but they're not necessarily going to have the capacity or even the desire to invest in all the equipment you'd need to shoot underground, sometimes for months at a time, monitoring cameras remotely. And so that was an area where we were able to diversify a little bit, and again ring fence us from irrelevance.
great. Tell us a little bit about running the business. You talked about having 9, 10 people. Um, Tell us, are they freelancers or are they permanent people? How does that work for you?
No, they are all on some form of permanent contract.
Mm.
And that is quite unusual for the
Yeah,
industry. And I think we discussed off camera about how freelancers tend to prevalate in around video production.
yeah.
But for us, that's enabled us perhaps to be somewhat more agile. There's very few projects we can't handle independently, almost entirely in house. We have an extended freelance pool that we draw from. Actually, a lot of ex employees who we're still on very good terms with, when we've got more than 2 or 3 shoots in a day, which is sort of our capacity. But yeah, it's unusual. Everyone knows their role. We keep a tight ship, and we're just that little bit more cohesive in our operation. I think sometimes looking outside in when we do jobs for international agencies, so much gets lost in translation between all of the different parties. And there are so many middlemen who are holding a clipboard and sending an email from the client to the production company, to the other agency or external party. And we sort of take that in house and manage it. And that keeps things simple, keeps things agile. And yeah, it's a little bit more unique.
I guess one of the challenges there with having a permanent staff on hand is I can see the advantages, but you have to be, I guess, very diligent around your pipe of clients, and making sure that that's consistent
That's right.
throughout
Yeah.
the year.
Capacity and pipeline is the
Yeah.
number one consideration. And as I say, the business is over 20 years old now. Incredibly, that's just how old I am. Um, but you reach a point where you just have to back yourself and say, look, there's always been demand. There will always be some level of
Mm,
demand. We
mm.
will stay relevant by constant innovation, always focusing on trying to make the client's life easier. Everyone loves to grumble about clients and what they do badly and what they don't know, but they pay all of our bills. So keep a happy client and you'll keep a happy, um, a large pipeline. But I think perhaps that's where the infrastructure niche has also served us on some level, because rather than coming in on a project by project basis, as we do with many clients in the agency world, there are examples where an infrastructure client will need services that are 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year. And you can scale a business more carefully in that manner when you know that you're going to have overheads covered. And it, at very least, gives you a little bit of time to work out where the next contract's coming from.
Yeah,
So
no, that's awesome. That's a massive advantage, isn't it? Having specializing or semi-specializing in those longer infrastructure projects. How do you find new clients? I guess 20 years in, you get a lot of referrals, but what are some of the other techniques that you use to find new clients and new work?
Well, we tendered for the Tideway project for the
Mm-hmm,
sewer under the Thames.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We've tendered for a lot of work in other major infrastructure projects on the DPS framework, the sort of government framework for um, projects that we're now eligible for. But I still would say the vast majority is word of mouth, and that's where networking and maintaining relationships with previous clients, previous employees, and not in a necessarily a salesy manner, but just doing the right thing and maintaining good relationships.
Yeah,
People want to work with good people, and again, looking forward to a world where AI is a far more integrated part of the production workflow. At the end of that pipeline, there's still going to be a person somewhere, and they're still going to want to work with someone that they get along with and have a good working relationship with. So that's been critical, and it's a strange alchemy. You know, if you could bottle that, and I could tell your listeners exactly how it's done, I'd probably be a far richer man. I don't know exactly how it's done, but I I think harnessing a sense of authenticity is really important to that. You know, I don't stay in touch with my old clients just because I'm hoping that I'll get work, or my old employees. I do it because I like them, because they're good
yeah.
people.
Yeah, great. Um, Tell us about running the agency. Are you still out there with a camera, or have you taken, are you more kind of managing the
Yeah, no, I
agency
have
now?
a sort of a head of operations now, and she is responsible for more of the day-to-day running of the business. So I suppose I am more a figurehead in that respect, because I have a lot of contacts over the last 20 years that I've accumulated. But yeah, the team is out most days. We'll have a shoot. There's always something going on, and you know, I'm too restless to sit on my laurels entirely. So if there's anywhere I can add value, I always certainly try.
We at Action Coach, we often coach business owners, sort of to do what you've done actually, which is we call it getting off the tools,
Mm.
which is um, coaching business owners to get to a point where they're not necessarily doing all the work and just working in the business, but they're working on the business that you've done by the sounds of it very successfully. And we also talk about the mindset of when is your business going to be done? And it doesn't mean done as in um, sell it, or it could be, but at least having the option where there's kind of a finish date that you're aiming for. And then you have the option to either sell it or continue working in the business, or, you know, having a partner fully take over the business. How do you think about your business in that context? Do you consider that it's kind of done? I mean, clearly business is never really done, but does it feel like you're at that point where you could take 6 months
Yeah,
off, for example, or?
Christmas is a good example. You know, we talked about doing crazy wild things, but I'm going to be rowing an ocean for a couple of months, and the business will be absolutely fine in my absence while I do that. That's not to say that even up until quite recently, I've been capable of fighting fires, but
Mm.
I do echo your sentiment that you need to be thinking more long-term strategy and bigger problems wherever possible. So, for example, my last little project was for 20 years, we have backed up all of our work on hard drives, and then you book it up on another hard drive, and then it's stored somewhere in a shed offsite or whatever else it might be. We do not store our video files in sheds. That wouldn't be appropriate. We store them in a safe. But I thought, hang on, I've always wanted to build a server. It's prohibitively expensive to build a large capacity server that's production grade. Let's see if I can write the code with AI. So that was my little project. And it turned out that it was surprisingly simple, and that AI is a wonderful teacher of code writing, and it will do
Mm.
95% of the legwork for you. But it was
Wow.
a big structural problem that the business had faced for decades,
Yeah,
that I was able to focus my time almost entirely
yeah.
on, whilst the day-to-day running the business was handled by other people.
Great
So that's
example.
maybe just one example there, but I do think that being able to focus on strategy becomes more important, not less important, when there is so many threats to our way of life in our industry at the moment.
Where would you like to, and we're going to get onto AI in just a second, but where would you like to, with your partner and your operations MD, where would you like to take the business in the next couple of years?
That's the million-dollar question. We discussed exiting the business. We've discussed, a management buyout or selling the business to employees, which
Mm.
has some nice tax incentive. I am at an age where if I'm ever going to do anything different, then I probably need to think about it in the next 2 to 5 years rather than the next 10 to 20 years, because I'll probably not always be capable or have the energy levels that I do now. In terms of scaling the business, we're at a really nice size now, as I say, where it feels like a family. I've I've had a higher number of staff in the past. As soon as you start to inject levels of middle management and you move up to 20 or so employees, I think it's just inevitable that you lose that familial environment that we really cherish here. But in the same breath, if you get much smaller, then your ability to service some client requirements is a struggle. So, we've had that opportunity to expand before, and we are quite comfortable at the sub 10 person mark right now, which might sound unambitious, but if I want to maintain a quality of life that we've built for ourselves now, it's a wonderful, our hours are not by any means 9 till 5, but we all more or less work a 40-hour week, which again is like unheard of in our industry. Then we have to be pragmatic in our approach to
Yeah,
growth options.
yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about AI and challenges and so on, and let's switch to briefly talk about AI. And last week, actually, somebody said to me, "Oh, Matt, you got to see this," and it was the VO3 model, the new.
Right, yeah, I saw it, it's amazing.
It's like, I mean, it's mind-boggling. If you haven't, if for those watching or listening, haven't seen it, go and check it out. But when you start to look at some of the capabilities that are coming down, that we thought maybe we're years away. We're actually here and now. I mean, how do you feel about AI? And because one of its sort of kind of first big industries it's clearly going to disrupt is image making.
Yeah.
I mean, for you, how do you view it? Do you view it as an opportunity or a threat or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I think in Mandarin, they call it a dangerous opportunity. That's the rough translation to the word threat or crisis. Dangerous opportunity,
Mm,
and undoubtedly for some of us, it will be an opportunity for
mm,
those who leverage the technology best of all. I think that fast forward 2 years down the line, things will look quite similar to how they are now.
mm,
Even 5 years maybe, but in 10 years, I think you're looking at a complete overall of how the industry is run and how film is commissioned, developed, produced, delivered. All of that will have changed in a decade. So a tremendous shift. And I actually spoke to a film grad in my hometown in Liverpool last week while I was back visiting some family. And my advice to him was that to be at the apex of where our technology and AI intertwine, because I think that filmmakers of the future aren't necessarily even going to be producers of content. They're going to be curators of content. And so there'll still be a role there, right? But you're going to need to be able to work across a variety of different GBTs and different softwares and interface them well together to survive. And some people are more set up for that than others, but it's to some degree a level playing field, right? So if an old guy like me can build a server or write a program to download every Vimeo film you've ever made in the last 15 years, which is what I'm currently doing off screen, then there'll be younger, more digitally enabled graduates who will be able to write and cultivate the film of their dreams
yeah.
by working with AI as a collaborator.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I'm sure you're right. And there's a whole new set of skills required. I mean, not just prompt engineering, but I mean the fundamentals of storytelling, right? In terms of consistency, clarity of message, the story arc, the consistency. If it's in a kind of fictional, it's not quite what you do, but in a kind of fictional, imagined world, the consistency of the creative delivery and character consistency and so on. There's going to be a whole variety of new skills required for that.
Whereas I sometimes refer to the film industry or the creative industries more generally as the canary in the coal mine for AI.
Yeah,
Nobody wants
yeah,
an AI doctor doing surgery on your parents just yet, or even necessarily wants to sit inside an AI driven car. Like, we're going to wait and see how that pans out in San Francisco first. But filmmakers, our creativity, just let loose and see what happens, which is
yeah,
the process we're going through. And initially, I was quite begruntled by that. But now I'm like, well, hey, that just means we're going to be further ahead of the curve when this technology becomes,
yeah,
fixed in our day-to-day living.
yeah,
And it's accelerated our desire to make ourselves more AI resilient. And there are certain aspects of this industry that AI can't do, right? So, we're training on higher end drones that can be flown remotely underground without a spotter, or you're doing training videos where you're teaching compliance about services and you're interviewing a CEO. I mean, unless you start auto generating the CEO and that's going to have GDPR restrictions around it, you're still going to need somebody to sit in the room with that CEO to film them and interview them. So there are ways that you can provide yourself with more income streams, more buffers, and stay ahead of that curve.
great. Now, you talked about this very briefly just a minute ago, which is you've got some pretty amazing things that you do in your what spare time you do have. And you talked a little bit about rowing, which we're going to cover in a second. But you've done some amazing, you were just telling me before, you had done some amazing things, some really, truly awe-inspiring adventures and achievements. Tell me a little bit about two or three of those that you've done, Stuart.
They are ludicrous. I don't know whether they're actually that amazing. I will get
I
laughed at
think they are.
off camera here by people who've heard the stories so many times. They're like, "Oh God, he's talking about his mountaineering again." Um, but I find I need a gratitude reset once every 24 months. Maybe I could stretch to 3 years, but after 2 years, all my worst qualities start to rise to the fore, and I lack that time to step completely away from the internet and social media and my emails and think more strategically about what I want out of life. And there is no better way to do that than to step onto an ocean rowing boat, row 3 or 4 thousand miles for 1 or 2 months without any connection with the outside world. Although with Starlink now coming to the fore, even that becomes impossible. That you can never really truly be off grid. But I have a penchant for polar exploring, and I've summited Mount Everest and done 2 ocean rows, and I've got my third one this December that I'm now in training for. And yeah, they are a wonderful gratitude reset. You come back feeling incredibly empowered, and uh, all of the trivial problems you face day to day just seem rightly irrelevant on your return and enable you to approach life with a renewed vigor and verve. So that's it. It's my 2 years is up, and I'm away again in December.
So, and that's transatlantic rowing.
Yes, that is. I think it's billed as the world's toughest race, and it's from La Gomera in the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean, and it'll take somewhere between 30 and 60 days, hopefully closer to 40 days. I would hope. I'm in a team of four with an ex-England international and another couple of wild adventurers who've both climbed Everest themselves, and we're raising money for the Matt Hampson Foundation and the Clockwork Foundation. So a couple of great charities. But yeah, it's going to be amazing. Obviously, I will take cameras out there and I'll shoot loads of stuff, but that will not be my principal reason for being on the boat. It will be just to put myself through hell so that I come back to the UK a better man.
Geez, you're going to know those other three or four guys pretty well if you don't know them well already. I assume you've already been training with them, but
We are training with them, but you're
yeah,
absolutely right. And I've said that a few times about the last row I did was the Indian Ocean, Australia to Africa, 58 days, which set a Guinness World Speed Record. And I know things about the two guys on that boat that I think even their own partners don't know about them. They
yeah,
know everything about me. They've seen me at my lowest ebb.
yeah,
I've watched them vomit in a bucket, poop in a bucket,
yeah,
bucket and chuck it overboard. It definitely distills life back down to the absolute
yeah.
basics. It's very primitive, but it is so wonderfully carefree. You know, you suddenly start thinking differently once you're outside of your comfort zone like that. And yeah, there's something about the way it gets the neurons firing that I just find really rewarding, and a part of my growth that you wouldn't imagine you get to even have after a certain age.
Let's just segue into the final section of this, which is around leadership. Now, you must have been in some incredibly hairy situations, doing all of those adventures, and clearly require a lot of tenacity and determination, and also planning, right? Planning and logistics, and that's a bit of a sort of cliche question, but how does that all of that amazing, really putting yourself out there, how has that made you, do you think, a better leader when it comes to running your company?
I think you're absolutely right on the logistics. It gives you
Mm.
an uncanny eye for detail,
Hmm.
and you tend to spot things that would otherwise get overlooked in the grey maelstrom of everyday life. Um, and that perceptive addition to your arsenal, your personal repertoire is wonderful. But it does, as I say, it does deteriorate over time. You sort of fall back into the grind a year or two later. Um, it teaches you a lot about teams and about how to be a better team player, that you want to surround yourself with people who are better than you, not people who are yes men who do just what you tell them. That a little conflict is a great thing as long as it's done through a process of legitimate intellectual discourse. And it helps if you remove ego from the equation, which again, on an ocean rowboat or trying to summit Everest, there are some huge personalities doing those sort of activities. But by the by the nature of what they're doing, and by the sort of human risk that's involved, on some level, these big personalities are able to park their ego to one side. Um, and that's something that, as you know, it's deeply humbling, and it makes me not just, I think, a better business leader, but just a better human being. Actually, certainly a more appreciative one, and certainly a more generous one, and more patient. Makes you very, very patient. You know, if you're on an ocean rowboat and you're seeing the same flaws in the same people 12 hours a day, day on, day off, shift after shift, you know, it can be really telling. So you get superhuman levels of patience to get through an experience like that.
Great, great summary. I'm interested in all of that, but just one quick follow up. The conflict is a good thing. I'm guessing that when the stakes are so high with some of these things that you're doing, I guess that robust, really examining a decision, is that what you mean? Like a really making sure a decision is looked at and debated, and you're absolutely making the right decision, or do you mean something else by that?
Well, yeah, I mean, if your life's on the stake, and
Yeah.
you know you've got a 40 mile per hour tailwind, and you're going really fast, and you want to go really fast, but also there's a chance you might capsize, and one person is really hot in their cabin and they leave the door open, and if you capsize, the boat isn't going to self-right. You know, you're going to have no qualms about cutting through the mustard and being like, no, we are going to close all the cabins and we're going to put out a sea anchor and we're going to slow this boat down, even though it goes against every fiber in our being to do so, because it's absolutely the right thing to do. And that decisiveness translates over really well to business. There are some times where you've got to make really hard decisions and it's so easy to stall on them. But if you can be decisive about it, you can damage limitate so much better, and you'll never regret having, you know, made those calls.
Love it. Great example. Um, Leaders that have inspired you. The same question we ask everybody that comes on. It could be an explorer, it could be a early leader, it could be a mentor, but who's somebody that's had like an amazing effect on your career, or it could even be some of these amazing adventures you've been on.
God, you know, funnily enough, I'm reading an autobiography of Abraham Lincoln at the moment.
Uh-huh.
And what I think was so unique about him is that he surrounded himself with people who'd all been vying for his job. And he perfectly encapsulates that idea of employing people who are better than you, not people who your ego lets you employ because it makes you feel superior and because they'll do what you tell them. So he would definitely be one. Uh, for sheer, unabated determination, Henry V. Just read an autobiography of him. Never read about an individual who had a greater level of single-mindedness than I've experienced in all of human history. So he would be up there too. And more lately, Barack Obama. I've just finished his
Yeah.
autobiography as
Oh,
well,
yeah.
and he's
Yeah.
always been a character who's just inspired me. And I sometimes find myself in difficult situations thinking, what would he do in my shoes?
Yeah. Yeah. That's always a great signifier, isn't it? If something has made a big impact, when you start thinking about what would that person do in my shoes or
Yeah,
me in
and
their shoes. Yeah.
what I love as well is that you can draw different things from different people. I do
Yeah.
not want to advocate for invading France as Henry V did, but just certain aspects of his personality. You could say Steve Jobs, right? But a lot of people will say not necessarily the kindest person out there and not somebody whose interpersonal skills I would ever want to try and manifest. But for purity of vision, it's an incredible person to take
Yeah.
some inspiration from. And if you can take little aspects of different people that you would want to be a bit more like in different scenarios, that can only be a great thing. And,
Yeah.
you know, Abraham Lincoln, I think he had the whole package of works. He had the interpersonal skills, he had the vision, he had the determination, he had the absolute purity of heart and an unwavering desire to better the lives of his fellow man. And I don't think I've ever read about anyone else quite as important.
Great. Three great examples. Stuart, thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
Best of luck with your business and best of luck with that amazing rowing that's coming up.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Matt. Great to chat.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Take care.